Hi, my name is Mads. In this video, we're going to talk about how to organize SoundBanks into different scenes. What you'll see here is the Wwise Adventure game. In the left hierarchy window, you'll see how the Wwise Adventure game is organized into different scenes. At first, we have the main scene, which is kept in the hierarchy all from the first quest to the last quest. And then we have a lot of different audio environments. And these audio environments are loaded dynamically depending on where you are in the game. So let's try to do this in a different scene. So go into Certification 301, Lesson 3, and loading SoundBanks using triggers. So in the previous video, we created a trigger that would load a SoundBank. I will just quickly replicate that. So using this method, you were able to load a SoundBank when entering this trigger. For a lot of things, this method works fine, but there is another method you can also use. And that is loading a SoundBank from a different scene. This means that you can take audio assets that is only present in the woodlands and move it into the woodlands scene. And then when you load the scene where the SoundBank is in, you also load all the corresponding assets to it. So you're connecting all the events to the corresponding SoundBank. This will ensure that when you are loading or unloading a scene, that all the events that is dependent on the SoundBank is also unloaded or destroyed with it. So how do we do this? Well, first off, you'll start by making a scene, and then you'll take that SoundBank and put it into the scene. And afterwards, you will add a few things to the scene so you can see how it loads with the SoundBank. So in the project view, right-click, go to Create, and then select Scene, and call it Woodlands. And drag this scene into the hierarchy. Any new scene will start with a main camera and a directional light. But these things are already present in the previous scene. We have a main camera here, and there is a sun as well, the directional light. So you can easily delete these two game objects. Now you have an empty scene. So let's add a game object that you can add the SoundBank to. So right-click on the woodlands scene, go to game object and select create empty. And rename the game object Wwise. If you look in the inspector, you'll see there's nothing on the game object right now. So if you choose the woodlands trigger in the hierarchy and in the header of the AK bank, simply click and hold and drag it into the Wwise game object. As you'll be loading an entire scene using this trigger, you can then change the load on property to awake, because when this scene is loaded, this load on option will be called. And secondly, you could set the unload on to destroy, meaning that whenever you unload the woodland scene, the SoundBank will also get unloaded. That's it for the woodland scene for now. So you can save the scene, right-click it, save scene, and then remove the scene, so Unity can load it later on, and then click the woodlands trigger. And now you need to load the scene from this trigger. This requires some custom scripting. So we've made a script for you that is called load scene async on enter. In this script, you'll be looking at the scene to load property. And this is where you specify what scene is supposed to be loaded. And here you'll just type in woodlands. Notice that below it, there's a warning message. It will tell you that it cannot find your scene. And that's because you haven't added the scene to the build settings. So what you do is that you go into File, Build Settings. And here you can see a list of all other scenes that are loaded in runtime. And in this view, you will simply take the woodlands scene from the project view and drag it into the build settings scenes in build. As long as it's not in the top, the position doesn't matter. And you can close the build settings. And now you can see the load scene async on enter script is no longer displaying a warning message. And so let's try it out and run into the trigger. What you'll notice is that whenever the main camera was entering the trigger, the woodland scene would be appearing in the hierarchy, where you'll find the Wwise game object loading the SoundBank. By bringing up the Wwise Adventure Game's Wwise project, you will also be able to see that the woodland SoundBank is loaded. And when you exit the trigger again, the SoundBank would have disappeared from the Advanced Profile as Memory tab. So you pretty much just converted loading a SoundBank from a trigger into loading a SoundBank from a scene. But at the moment, you're not really using the full advantage of that method. So let's take the woodland scene into the hierarchy again. And in the loading SoundBanks using trigger scene, you'll find the waterfall game object. And underneath that game object, you'll find a waterfall up close game object. This game object will have a AK event, which is playing the ambient waterfall event. If you go into Wwise and look in the woodland SoundBank, you'll notice that the ambient waterfall event is inside the woodland SoundBank. And in Unity, this game object is in the loading SoundBanks using triggers. So when you're starting in the village and the woodland SoundBank has not been loaded, this event will not be able to play. And we can try it out. Right click and unload the scene. Press play and exit play mode again. Notice that Wwise will not be able to find the event on the waterfall up close game object. So because we are loading the SoundBank from a scene now, you can simply take the waterfall game object and drag it into the woodland scene. And this means that whenever you load the woodland scene, the SoundBank will be loaded. And then secondly, the waterfall up close event in start, which is triggered after awake, will post the ambient waterfall event. So let's remove the scene and see if we get any errors. In the console, there's currently no errors. And when you go into the trigger with the main camera, you'll see the woodland scene is now loading. And if we connect Wwise, go into voices graph, let's just pause here, go down to the waterfall up close game object, you'll see that the ambient waterfall blend container is currently playing. Then as we exit the trigger again, the scene will unload, and you will now see that there's no ambient waterfall event active. If you want to learn more about how to use Wwise in Unity, check out the Wwise-301 Certification.